This is the blue bubble shawl that I hand dyed, and what I'm doing at the moment is I'm sewing it together. So I've joined the cast on edge here and gone several times through the same 2 stitches. Now what I'm going to do is sew up the seam. Basically what you want to do is one side has got an edge just with your garter stitches, the other side you've got the loops that you made on every second row by doing the yarn over before you started knitting. So you pick up the edge of the garter stitch row on one side and you go through the loop on the other, and you work your way up, picking up the knobbly bit, going through the loop, picking up the knobbly bit, going through the loop. Just pull that a little bit tighter so that you can see. And what you get is your row of loops that looks similar to the next one along. So we'll just keep going. So through that bit, through the loop, through that bit, through the loop. Initially you don't want it too tight because you want to be able to move it a little bit, and you don't want this lot of loops that you on your edge to be tighter than these ones when you've blocked it. So keep it reasonably loose. Just keep working your way up, and there will be one of these nice bumpy bits on that side for every one of the yarn overs on the other side. Oops, there's a pull there, that's not good. Blocking will fix that. As you can see, my yarn's a little bit, it's not straight like if it was straight from the ball, and that's because when I dyed it, it was knitted in the soft blank, so it's remembered the shape of the stitches. When you knit wool that has been knitted and unpicked, it does make your tension look a little bit off, but once you have locked it, the wool will even out across your rows and make your tension look a lot more even, smooth. So that's not really a drama. If you don't like knitting with bumpy wool that has been previously knitted, what you can do is take that wool and wind it into a skein. I use a niddy noddy to do that, but you can just wind it around the back of a couple of chairs if you want to, and then wash it, and when you hang it to dry, weight it, and that will take a lot of the kinks out of the wool. I don't think it's really necessary though, as long as you can handle knitting with kinky wool. The end result is going to be the same whether you knit it straight from your sock blank or from a wash skein. Okay, we're nearly at the beginning. See the new lace pattern starts here, we're nearly at that point. So that's the last plain garter stitch row, and that's the last loop. I usually do is fix it here because let's do a bit of a knot. This bit of wool I'm using to sew it up is from this end of the dyed wool, so it's fairly light in colour. And as you can see, as you go further out to the edge of the shawl, it gets darker and progressively darker. So I use the centre piece for sewing up to that edge, and I just weave the end in here, and use the yarn from the outer edge of the shawl to sew it up from the outer edge to this point. Now leave a tail, because what will happen is when you washing and blocking it, you're going to stretch it a bit. So this is going to stretch in a bit, it's going to mat up a little bit because it's been washed, and you can trim it afterwards. If you trim it now, you may find that it is just a little bit too short and it unravels a little bit. So this is the tail end, and as you can see, put it against my shirt, it's quite dark compared to the other end. So let's do that bit. So I thread it onto my needle, and this is at the outer edge of the border. So again, you secure the two together, and usually, and even here you can see a colour difference, but it just adds to the interest. I'll show you what I mean. This it's very difficult to hold, hang on. This bit is where I started the border, this is where I finished the border, and as I went around the shawl, the wool got a little bit darker all the way around, progressively all the way around. Okay, so you've got 8 stitches on either side. 8 stitches were cast on, and 8 stitches were cast off. So you just go along and join the two edges together. And it's kind of like grafting, but not, because you've got cast off and cast on edges, not stitches, but the principle's the same. So you go in behind a full stitch on either side, and again I do this fairly loosely until I get to the edge of the border. Okay. And there we are. Then I can pull it a little bit tighter. Usually I tighten it all the way and then I pull it again the opposite way to loosen it up. So that's your seam. Okay. Then usually spread it out so I can see what I'm doing. You do the same thing as you did before. Now there's a loopy bit here because before you started the border you did the row of knit two together yarn round needles, so you've got fixes it here, you've got a row of holes, I guess you'd say, close together. So that's where you start. You go through the loop and then go through the knobby bit on the side. Now we don't, these are two edges that they're just both normal knitted edges. So what I do is I go into the knit stitch, out through the wrong side knit stitch, and then through the knobbly bit and through the knit stitch on that side. So through the knit stitch and out the knobbly bit, through the knobbly bit and out through the knit stitch. That way your garter stitch rows will line up. And you just work your way through to meet part of the seam that you've already sewn. Again, do this, reasonably loosely because you don't want the seam to be tighter than the rest of the shawl. So, I don't know if you can see that, but there I've got a nice lining up of all of the wrong size knit rows. And that's what you want it to look like. And if you do it not super tight, but a little bit loose and careful, you won't really see the colour differences. Because as you can see, the closer I get to the centre, the lighter the knitting is compared to the yarn I'm using to sew it up. Okay, we are getting there. For most things that I make, the sewing together is the bit that I like the least. But with these shawls and with the stoles I make, I actually quite enjoy the process of doing any sewing together that I need to do or grafting at the centre of a stole, because that means that it is ready to be blocked, and you don't actually see the true effect of lace knitting until it is blocked. And I love the difference between blocked and unblocked. I think it's like magic. It really is. And usually every time I knit something, I'm trying to do something new. Either it's a new pattern or a new design that I've come up with, or I'm tweaking somebody else's design. Like, for example, I'm going to do one shortly where it's a quite lovely Shetland lace pattern that is made in two pieces and joined by grafting in the centre, and then a border is knitted around the outside. You pick up the stitches and you knit around. What I want to do is use a similar border but knit it at the same time as I'm knitting the main part of the stole. I actually quite enjoy doing it that way. And I've worked out how to do it, so I'm going to give it a go. Once you become familiar with how these various pieces go together and get a bit of practice at the knitting bit so that it's almost second nature, you can do some pretty amazing things with your patterns or other people's patterns, just to make them look a little bit different. Or the other thing I quite often do is what I'm doing here, and using one of my favourite patterns. I would have knitted this pattern probably close to 20 times now. It's one that I can pretty much do in my sleep. But each one is different because I've done black one, cashmere. I've done plain old, ordinary white and cream ones, traditional shawls for people. I have done a pink one where I dyed the wool into 5 different depths of shade, like 5 balls. So there is a pretty much a distinct line between each colour in the shawl. I've done this one, which is dyed from the sock blank. So there's a kind of gradual change in colour. I've also done one where I did, it was a cream wool, and I used earth palette dyes and sprayed various different colours on it. It was very subtle in like pastels, but it was quite pretty. And we're done. And as with the other one, I did cut the yarn a little bit shorter, but I've left a tail, and that now is the sewn up shawl. What I've got to do now is go and wash it and then block it so that everybody can see what it looks like when it's done. So bear with me and I will be back.